A tree that hid 20 robbers in its belly. 100 crore tree. Or a walking mango tree. These are all stories not from any mythology, but these are stories of trees that exist in our country. For the last 2 years, I've been chasing these stories across the country. I have traveled about 40,000 kilometers in the last 2 years, visiting and documenting these trees, each one of them having a very unique story behind them. But my story with trees does not go back to 2 years, it goes back to my childhood. My childhood, we didn't have social media, we didn't have, uh, mobile phones. But what we did was outdoors, and trees were where we spent our time. I would spend my time was on trees. Trees were basically playgrounds, they were hideouts. There were also fruit shops. So we would climb trees to pluck fruits, to hide from my friends, and so on. Apart from the regular stuff what a kid in those days did, I also had a task of collecting sap from banyan trees for my grandfather. My grandfather was an Ayurvedic doctor and he needed the sap to make one of his medicines. So I would go out, head towards the nearest banyan tree. In those days, it was a place called Kukatpalli. Climb up the tree, collect the sap, and get it back to him. As the years went by, I had to go a little bit further to reach the first banyan tree. Hyderabad was growing and the roads were being widened, and obviously, we were losing our trees. So, nearest banyan tree obviously was getting a little far away, and that's the reason why I had to go further away to get this, collect this banyan sap. My grandfather passed away in 1993, and with him, the whole exercise of going and climbing banyan trees also faded away. Life moved on, finished my education, got a job, married, had two wonderful kids, started my business, and in 2010, I was constructing a foot-over bridge for the Municipal Corporation of Hyderabad, and 16 trees were in the footfall, and I was given the permission to remove these trees. Anyone else probably would have removed them, but I just couldn't remove these trees. So I decided to do something very unusual in those days. I translocated all of the 16 trees to a nearby lane at my cost. 2010 was when I first tried an experiment with translocating trees, and 13 out of the 16 trees survived. That moment actually changed everything for me as far as trees were concerned. Till then, trees were playgrounds, but then the trees had become environment for me from 2010. I went on to found Vata Foundation, a volunteer-based organization, and over the years we have saved over 5,000 trees across the country. Any tree that the government was cutting down with permission, we would adopt that tree, translocate it to an adopter who wanted the tree for free of cost. Apart from saving trees, we also entered into the jungles. Working in a jungle in Maharashtra, converting it into a self-sustaining biodiverse system. We were working with the forest department, creating lakes, also working on the wildlife habitat. So today, a lake that we have created in Maharashtra, a tiger has made it its home. All through the journey, after having saved the trees, some of the trees stayed very close to my heart. A jungly jalebi tree in Nagar Karnool Girls Government High School. May of 2017, the tree had fallen down in a summer storm, and this was the only fruiting tree in the entire school campus. The principal had called us and wanted help to revive this tree. A team of 7 of us, volunteers, and I went and put this tree back up. And this entire school, along with the kids, every year on July 28th, tie Rakis to this tree and celebrate its coming back to life. Most of the highways where initial work happened, some trees would have been left abandoned. A banyan tree, two banyan trees were left abandoned on Sri Salam highway, left to die, and one of my volunteers had identified it about a week later. We saved this tree 75 kilometers away from Hyderabad, brought it back and put it in a school with the funds raised by a schoolgirl sitting in the United States. A fallen banyan, again in a summer storm in Arambol, Goa. This tree was known as the source. Almost every visiting foreigner would go and visit this tree. 500 of them would sit under this tree in meditation. This tree had fallen down and all of them were heartbroken. So they reached out to me. This was during COVID time. They wanted help in putting this back up, but the challenge was there was no crane available. So I went there, spent about 3 days with whatever equipment is available. We put this tree back up. I took the risk of going to Goa during COVID because this tree had brought together people from across the globe. They had come together to contribute to save a tree which was not even there in their country. Often, when I would go back and revisit these trees that we saved, I felt some kind of a connect, some kind of an energy transfer happening, which brought this question to me: what if trees could talk? What stories would they tell? And going through the regular development work, so many trees being cut, we were losing some very, very important trees. So I sat down and started mapping, putting all the trees that every state's oldest tree, every state's largest tree, and lot of trees in between with some incredible stories. I'll run you through a few of these stories. So this journey of mine where I was going and visiting these trees, I have named it the Big Tree Quest. The tree is not big, but the stories behind them were very big. 1908, Hyderabad had one of its worst floods. Estimated 15,000 to 50,000 people got washed away in that floods. But a lucky 150 of them climbed up on one single tamarind tree which stands off of the Musi banks. They sat on this tree for 2 days, saving themselves from the floodwaters. The tree was very popular in the initial years, but then as time went by, people forgot. The tree still stands there today. A baobab tree besides the Golconda Fort. This tree has a cavity inside its trunk which can house 20 people. But instead of 20 people, there were 20 robbers living in this tree for a long time. They would go out in the night into the fort area, they would steal, rob, and come back and hide in this tree and never get caught. They would also cook in the tree. They had a little kitchen built inside the tree and they would cook in the tree. And that gave away their game. One day the soldiers saw smoke coming out of this tree and they thought the tree was burning down. So they came to rescue the tree and they caught these robbers in it. India's oldest tree is a pencil cedar, 2042 years old. And this sits up in the Himalayas, Lal Spiti Valley, and took me about 18 months to identify and locate this tree with the help of friends, locals, and the forest department. So last year, my son and I went up the trek. It's about 11,000 feet above sea level. Took us 4 hours on a very steep, slippery mountain through avalanche rubble to reach this tree. And this is the India's oldest tree at 2042 years old. Nandaur Wildlife Sanctuary in Uttarakhand. It had a tree by the name Champion Tree. This is a 500-year-old semel, accessible after a 10-kilometer trek through tiger territory. So I didn't know what I was thinking, but the tree called me and I just left. And with 3 forest guards, last October 24, we walked 10 kilometers crossing 2 rivers to reach a tree which is called the Champion Tree. When I reached the spot, I could see the river was meandering towards the tree. And within a few years, I apprehended that this river might damage the tree and it might fall down. So I flagged this tree with the DFO, who was very kind enough. Within 3 months, he built a very strong bank, securing this tree from the river. So this tree will survive. Along the drive, there were a few sad stories also. And there was one tree that I ran into in Ratnagiri. Driving in the night, my vehicle lights fell on this tree and I didn't believe what I saw. So I got down to inspect this tree. It was a tree on which about a few thousand birds were sleeping. They use this tree to sleep overnight. A closer look, I realized that this tree was right in the middle of a flyover that was being built. Now the flyover is done and the tree is gone. So this is one of the laws which I have recorded. If we go back into our history, there were very few, very, very important trees. Nirmal, 200 kilometers from here, had one banyan tree on which a Gond Raja and his entire army of 1,000 soldiers were hung on single day. The tree is not there today and there's a monument in its place. 1857, the Sepoy Mutiny also had one important tree. It was in Kanpur, a banyan tree under which 133 freedom fighters would sit and plan their strategy against the British. The government built a park around this tree, called it the Nanaro Park. Today the park exists, but the tree doesn't exist. So this was one of the driving force behind the big tree quest. I wanted to visit these trees before it was too late and document them so that it is available on one platform for anyone to come and take a look. All through my journey with the trees, I thought I was saving trees, but the trees that we were saving were actually changing people. The school principal of the girls' government high school went on to save more trees by herself after seeing us save this one tree in her school. One tree in Goa had brought together people from across the globe. They all contributed to save a tree which was not in their country. A DFO went out of his call of duty to save a tree because I requested him to save that tree. So I would like to leave you with this thought today. We measure our cities through high rises, through flyovers, 100 crore per acre. But what if the actual wealth of the city is standing quietly right beside us? Because in Hyderabad, we have a tree that has saved 150 people. It still stands in its place, quietly waiting, not to be photographed or not to be worshipped, but to be noticed. Because all through our history, we have not saved trees. The trees were saving us. Trees were saving us from floods. Trees were saving us from landslides. Trees were saving us from the summer heat. And if we lose them, we will probably not have a chance to be saved again. So when you walk out of this room, I would request you to look at the trees around you because you never know which tree holds what story in its belly. Thank you.